public education has gone off the rails.
Once you get into this idea that it's really the government's job to educate children, you end up in a very, very dangerous place, and I don't see anything good coming out of that.
When we look at this radical agenda, the way our children are being exploited and the way parents are getting shut out, it comes down to one fundamental question. Whose children are they?
Whose children are they?
Whose children are they?
¿De quién son esos niños?
Whose children are they?
Where did this idea come from that we're even asking whose children are they?
It's where all the money is. It's why the union is there. It's why it's so corrupt.
Now it's about power and money and politics, and somehow the kids are getting lost in all of that.
Our teachers are bullied. Parents are shut out.
America as we know it is being reimagined in a very dangerous way.
That just lights a fire into my butt, and that's why I want to put a stop to critical race theory, so that a lot of friendships can be saved and that we can just all get along.
I hesitate to say that there was a silver lining to COVID, but parents suddenly had this window into what their children were learning day in and day out.
Critical race theory is dividing our children in ways that are unacceptable.
It pits one race against another.
You cannot use racism to eradicate racism.
Less than 1/3 of America's school children are proficient in anything.
They're teaching these kids X-rated sex acts.
I don't want my daughter exposed to that.
The school system wants to indoctrinate us teachers first before we indoctrinate your kids.
Certain ways of thinking are approved, and certain ways of thinking are not.
They sentenced me to jail because I wanted a better education for my daughters.
They're not interested in tolerance.
Their whole goal is to intimidate, to silence the opposition.
There's so much damage done by the lockdown on the students.
Days turned into weeks and then months.
It doesn't actually surprise me that there's been more suicides. I know I've had those thoughts.
They told me, if you want to teach, you'll sign.
We want to make sure that teachers know that you do have another option.
Right now in schools, it is not safe to be a teacher.
This was the most preventable mass murder in American history.
Less than 30 seconds, it was done.
And my daughter was murdered at the school.
It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're a mom and a dad first.
And if we lose this battle on the educational front, then we lose not only our country, but we lose our kids. And we lose the ability to bring our children up the way that we want.
They are assaulting parental rights. They are not respecting our cultures, our values. They're not respecting our voice.
The reality is we're not dissenters, we're the parents.
So the question has to be asked.
Hi, welcome to Ellis Talker Show. This is DV LeBron. Today I have a very special guest, the producer of Whose Children Are They? Miss Rebecca Friedrichs. How are you, ma'am?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, DV.
Thank you for coming on. I'm very grateful. So I saw this trailer, not this one specifically, the first one you put out, and I was floored by it. It is a crazy thing, this education system nowadays, and it seems like you're being part of being a solution to some of these problems. But first, I want to get to who is Rebecca Friedrichs. Can you tell me a little bit about you?
Well, sure. I'm actually a teacher. I was a public school teacher in California for 28 years, and I taught kindergartners all the way through fourth grade. And I would still be there serving the parents and their children if it wasn't for all this horrible corruption that's in our schools. And so, what I discovered while I was teaching was, first of all of us teachers were forced to fund these so called teacher unions. And what I discovered was they're the ones that are pushing and funding all of these evil agendas that are in our schools. So if you have a bad school board, it's because the unions put those people into office. If you have a sexualized curricula or critical race theory or an anti-discipline policies where your classrooms have become war zones or any other problems in your schools, you can trace all the problems back to these so-called teacher unions. So in 2013, myself and 9 other California teachers stood together and we brought a lawsuit against the unions because all government employees, including teachers, were forced to fund unions as a condition of employment for over 40 years. So we thought that was wrong, that these unions could use money they forced out of us, taxpayers funded money that they, gave to us as our salary. And then we had to pay these unions who were not only sexualizing our children, but destroying our country, purposely destroying our schools, dumbing down the curriculum and all sorts of things. We didn't think we should have to pay for that. So 10 of us brought a lawsuit. I was lead plaintiff. It was Friedrich versus California Teachers Association. We also sued the National Education Association. And our goal was to end forced unionism for all government employees in the United States of America. And our case blazed the trail. Our case was heard in 2016, and it blazed the trail for ending forced unionism in 2018. So now all government employees and including all teachers, no longer have to pay unions. But most of them have no idea that the unions are the ones pushing this wicked agenda, and most of them have no idea they've been freed. So I left the classroom, and my husband, who was a 42-year educator, retired, and we volunteer all of our time to educate people, to expose the unions and let people know, hey, you don't have to pay these wicked people anymore. They can come to our website for kidsandcountry.org, and we teach them, we help them step by step opt out of these unions. They just have to click on union exit, and we can help them with that.
Wow. It sounds like you've put a lot of, and continue to put a lot of your time into helping students and parents and such, because one of the things that need to be distinguished is the teacher's role in this. There are some very fabulous teachers, and obviously there's been video of teachers who not so fabulous. So what is your thoughts on how teachers are responding or not responding to this problem?
I'm so thankful that you brought this up, because what these so-called unions really want to do, they're really a political animal, and they're using teachers and other government employees as pawns to fund a very radical agenda to undermine our free republic, to undermine our families, to undermine our schools. And teachers are against that. Most Americans are against that. And so what they do is they purposely work to make people hate teachers. They want to divide and conquer. They want all of us. That's what critical theory is: divide and conquer everyone. They want us to hate police. They want us to hate doctors and nurses. They want us to hate teachers. This is all a part of their plan. So the reason I'm so happy you asked this is we don't want to blame this on teachers. Most teachers are good people, and they're working really hard. A lot of them have PTSD nowadays because they're in such a corrupt and wicked system. They're trying to survive. Their profession is being just pulled apart by these unions. And so most teachers are against this. But the reason why people don't know that is because, number one, the unions control the narrative. They are very much a part of the mainstream media. They fund it. And so the union message gets out there. But a teacher like myself, we don't have a voice. I mean, I do now because I've fought for such a long time and, wrote a book, and this is all we do is just push this message out. But my voice is minuscule compared to the massive voice of these unions who collect billions and billions annually tax-free from unsuspecting government employees. So it's really important to know that there are many great teachers out there and they need us to stand with them. And if we can educate them, we have something we call adopt a teacher. We ask you, put your arms around a teacher, educate them about what their unions are really behind. They're behind the radical sexualization of your kids, the unions, not the teachers. And the unions bring in their activists, or they bring in Planned Parenthood to get this wicked agenda accomplished. And then it's blamed on teachers. So it's really important that we understand that good teachers are not a part of this, and we need to stand with them, help them to reject the unions. They no longer have to pay them. We can help you with that. You just come to our website, forkidsandcountry.org. But also, teachers, did you know you can stand together and decertify the unions and kick them out? So that we have a lot of choices. And if you're a legislator, please help us to make unions illegal. So a lot of things we can do standing together.
And that is the unions are very powerful, especially or in California. And you know, you were speaking earlier that your lawsuit paved the way to kind of break that monopoly. But I remember just working as a classified employee at a school district at one point. I had to join a union. There was no not joining the union at the time. So it is I understand that, and that was good that they got freed from that, and they're able to decide if they want to be in a union, then they've chosen it. You know, they weren't forced to it. So you mentioned CRT, Ms. Friedrichs, and CRT is something that there's a lot of, so Texas banned CRT, right? But it's got more holes than Swiss cheese. Yeah, it just does. It's got more holes than Swiss
Yes, it
cheese.
does.
And so one of the common things that you see online is, you know, it's happened here too in our local schools between Midlothian and Waxahachie, is that um, that CRT is a college level course. This is just gaslighting. They're not doing the CRT in our schools. SEL is not CRT. SEL is it help well what part of you know, the SEL helps children become better children. So what part, like showing them kindness is a bad thing? Which part do you really hate? So they put up a straw man and just beat the heck out of them. You know,
Yep.
just that's what they do. But I wanted you to speak on that, on the subtleties and the different ways that CRT is coming in, and what the SEL have to do with it.
SEL, social emotional learning, has everything to do with CRT. So just so your audience, they might already know, but CRT comes from critical theory. It's a Marxist theory, and critical theory is basically divide and conquer. So you can have critical race theory in America. We're a melting pot. We have all these different races. So if you want to divide Americans, divide them by race. So that's what these folks, and when I say these folks, this is really a Marxist communist agenda to bring down our American free republic. And critical theory has been used over and over again in history to bring down nations, to divide people. You could have critical class theory. You could have a critical vaccination status theory. You can divide people on anything, critical sex theory. And so that's what they're doing. It's divide and conquer. Is CRT in our schools? Yes, it's in all 50 states. I would guess even if it's banned in your state, it's still being snuck in some way, because these teacher unions have so much power and they have infiltrated all 50 states in so many different ways, not only in our schools, but in corporations, in all our agencies and institutions. So social emotional learning, the radical sex ed is very much connected to this whole agenda. They might call it ethnic studies. There's so many, they might call it DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's so many different buzzwords that can be used to teach critical race theory. And so just look out for anything that's dividing people. Are you saying, look, you have more favors because you're one color instead of the other color? That's critical theory. Or, oh gosh, you harmed another person because of your color. That's critical theory. We all know, we learned from not only from God, from Christ, but also from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who followed the teachings of Christ, that we are to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So anyone who's trying to divide you by anything else but your character, by anything else but that, we're all humans and we're working together. If they want to divide you, they're involved with critical theory. And if they're saying to you, oh, we're not doing this, when they really are, then they're deceivers. or they're deceived and they're believing the deceivers. So it's time that we stand up and say, hey, you're not going to do this to us anymore. My students and I used to say, we're living Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, because we had 42 languages on our campus. I had the lightest skin in my class pretty much every year. My students were every color, coming from all over the world. We all adored each other, and we judged each other on the content of our characters. We need to get back to that. We can't let these people with a wicked agenda divide us, because they're trying to divide our republic and rob us of our liberties.
You mentioned faith right now. I share your faith. One of the things that's commonly mocked by people who say there's no CRT or there's no SEL, or our faith is mocked. Tell me, what role does your faith play in this journey that you have set upon?
My faith plays 100% role in this journey. So I was teaching and I saw all this wickedness happening around me. I mean, every teacher meeting I would go to, the unions would come in and tell me how we had to be against parents having the choice to choose where their children go to school, or they were pushing this radical sex ed, or they were, pushing whatever, dumbing down the curriculum, removing phonics, doing all kinds of things that were bringing harm to the children and bringing harm to my profession, bringing harm to our country. And so I knew something was very wrong, and I started praying about it. Lord, what can I do about this? And God asked me to start writing, and just make it clear, I don't hear voices or anything. It's just, this urging in my heart that I should start writing editorials, because I kept reading in the newspaper articles written by union leaders claiming that the union was so great, that they spoke for teachers. And I thought, that's not my experience. They don't speak for me. They don't speak for a lot of my colleagues. In fact, they bully us and they lie about us and they make people hate us. And they make people think that we all think the same way, that we're all voting for abortion when most of us are against abortion. And so I just, I obeyed God. He asked me to write editorials. I didn't even know how to turn in an editorial. I wrote one, I turned it in, and by God's grace, it was picked up and it was then reprinted nationally. And within 6 months of that first editorial, I was serving as lead plaintiff in a federal lawsuit heading all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. That does not happen. That wasn't anything I could do. I was a kindergarten teacher at the time. I had zero contacts. I didn't know any lawyers, let alone lawyers that argue at the Supreme Court. That was God's grace. That was him. He asked me to do something. I took a tiny step of faith. He'd ask me for another thing. I'd take another tiny step. And he brought it all together. And he brought the lawsuit and so many other blessings since then, just by saying yes to him. So it's 100% the reason that I keep moving forward, and the reason that the battle is blessed, because he's behind it. We're doing our best to listen to him and follow what he asked us to do.
And that's always good when you're following your calling, and not just in a generic way, but the call that you've gotten from your Lord and Savior. Yeah. You were mentioning about how the unions, and you've talked about this, how the unions are doing this. Kind of give me like a specific example of how the unions are sneaking in this, or complicit, or not complicit, they're driving this. Can you kind of give me like one specifics for my audience?
Yeah, the unions are definitely driving it. Let's see. I don't know which example your audience would prefer, but let's just take the radical sex ed. I live in California. There was a bill passed called the California Healthy Youth Act. It became law in 2017. And that law was, the teachers unions helped write it. They put into office the assemblywoman who pushed and promoted the bill. They put into office every single Democrat that voted for the bill. And when you read this law, the California Healthy Youth Act, first of all, there's nothing healthy about it. They're pushing this very sexualized agenda. And then the teacher unions also control the people that run the California State Department of Education. And so then they choose the curricula that's going to be used to push this new sex ed. And all 6 of the curricula that they chose for our state, that schools could choose from these 6 curricula, all 6 of them are equally pornographic, and in my opinion, they're child abuse, and they're not teaching children about the biology. They're teaching children, they're sexualizing children, they're teaching children outright, hey, you're young, you don't know what you are, you might be homosexual, might as well just try it, why don't you try it? Or maybe you're bisexual, or maybe you're transgender. The teacher unions are pushing all of this, and they're pushing it hard. They push these gay straight alliance clubs on the campuses, and they tell the kids, your parents are old fashioned, they don't really know much, there's really not just two genders, your parents assigned you a gender, you'll figure out your gender from a spectrum of genders, you can be a tree, you can be a dog, you can be all these things. They're literally attacking not only our Judeo-Christian virtue, but they're attacking our families, they're undermining our parents, they're teaching lies, like that there's more than two genders. That's just scientifically untrue. So the teacher unions are behind all of this. And what they do in these laws, California Healthy Youth Act, they wrote into the law that if teachers are unqualified to teach in this area, then the experts are brought in. Well, what does that really mean? Well, most teachers, they see this, they go, there's no way I'm going to teach this, not in a zillion years. This is child abuse. I know teachers who said, I'll take 2 weeks off of work the 2 weeks that curricula is coming in. I mean, teachers don't want to teach this. They see it as pornographic. They see it as child abuse. Well, so the teachers unions took care of that. Oh, you don't want to teach it? The experts will come in. So now Planned Parenthood has contracts with school districts all over the country. All of that is thanks to the so-called teacher unions. So the teacher unions are driving it. They are the root cause of all these wicked things that are going on in our schools, all this undermining of parents, undermining of our constitutional free republic, our Judeo-Christian virtue. It's all the teacher unions. It's not teachers. And they're not really a union. They're this radical political action committee that uses teachers as pawns. So you mentioned earlier, that the unions are driving this, and you mentioned the word complicit. So the one thing I like to say to teachers is, I know you're scared. I know it's hard to opt out of the union. They're mean to you. I have teacher friends who've been spit upon by union leaders. I've been bullied by union leaders. They called me the spawn of Satan. They've called me all kinds of horrible names.
Spawn of Satan.
Yeah, they always label you what they're really doing, right? So what I like to say to teachers is, please, the children are in danger. The schoolhouse is on fire. Parents are being undermined. We're about to lose our liberties. Don't be complicit in funding this. You don't have to pay them anymore. Please, please, please opt out of the unions. Come to forkidsandcountry.org. We help you with the whole thing. So we can't be complicit in this evil anymore. We have to be brave and stand up to it, because there's more of us than there are of them. Let's chase them out of town.
Speaking of, and you were speaking about, identifying of whatever you want. I mean, there's even identifying as a cat nowadays. So, and then as far as, the caricatures that are created. So this has been a very common thing for the last few years, maybe just a little bit more, where people are categorized. If you call them a racist, if you call them, just simply diminish them to this little word, racist, homophobe, you name it. There's a billion ist and a billion phobes. And you reduce them to that, then anything they say no longer matters. You've assassinated their character. It would be like if, Hitler had a book on, cooking. It wouldn't matter because he was Hitler. Nobody wants to read a cookbook from Hitler,
right?
And so exactly. they do that often, so often. I mean, people just get beat up, and they're humans. I see this in the candidates races that I cover. Even in this local races, they get ugly, and it's just appalling. But the how is SEL connected to it? Like how because a lot of people say, well, SEL is this, and that's not CRT. That has been a major discussion locally. Yeah. So what would you say is how SEL is used or not used?
I would ask people who think SEL is okay, have you ever read any SEL curricula? Have you ever been to a training on SEL? So the teachers I speak to weekly who are forced into these trainings or who see these curricula coming into their school, what they see and what they send to me, and then I read it for myself, is the SEL is a whole bunch more of the sex ed. It is just loaded with the gender ideology and it just the whole agenda to make our children immoral, to undermine families. So in my opinion, SEL is what they use to get a hold of your child's mind. And, the sex ed, they use that to get a hold of your child's body. They want to control your child from head to toe. They want to control your child's mind, spirit, body, soul, and turn your child away from you. And SEL is part of that. And once you see some of the curricula, if you have a teacher in your life who's seen it and is willing to show it to you, take a look at it. You'll be shocked. It's just more of the same. So I just look at it as it's all the same agenda. They keep labeling it another label, and their labels always sound so nice. They always sound, the sex ed, comprehensive sexuality education. Oh, it's going to protect the kids from, disease or something. No, it's actually causing disease. So you have to think of it. It's Orwellian. They flip words on their head. You were just talking about how no matter what we say, they call us a bigot or a racist or whatever. That's because we have the truth on our side and they're lying. So they can't have an argument with us. They just have to attack us. So we just have to be aware that anything they're promoting is a lie, is an attack, is going to harm us and harm our children. That's why they won't have a debate with us. So beware, SEL. It's not safe. It's not good for your children.
Miss Friedrichs, one of the things that I do is I do interviews with all kinds of people, and I did an interview with Mark and Amber, and they made the Mind Polluters documentary. And in that Mind Polluters documentary, it talks about the comprehensive sex education and stuff that's going into schools. And then they tie it to Mr. Kinsey or wherever it is, Mr. Kinsey, who wrote books, about how many times a baby can have an orgasm. And somehow they based the sexual education on that, on the thesis that children are sexual beings. So can you speak on the over-sexualizing in our classrooms?
Yeah, I can tell you Alfred Kinsey was a child abuser. And I can tell you that the teacher unions accept those ideas and ideals. And they're definitely sexualizing our children in our schools. We touch on that in our movie too. We have, we cover several topics that are going on in the schools, and the sex ed is one of them. We have a parent who got a hold of all the curricula in the state of California, and she just kind of goes through some of the things that are being taught to the children. It's jaw-dropping. They're telling us as teachers to basically accept pedophilia. They're telling us, in California, they passed a new law, teachers unions were behind this too, that, hey, if there's only 10 years between the adult and the child, okay, so the child's 14 and the adult's 24, oh, that's not illegal. That's not a problem. We can accept that. No, I don't accept that. And I don't know anyone who accepts that. But those are the kind of laws that are being passed by the unions and their friends. And those are the kind of things that are being pushed in our schools. So the sexualized agenda too, just very quickly, what they do is they claim that they are making these lessons age appropriate. But when you actually read the lessons for yourself, when you read the curricula, for example, there's a curricula written by Planned Parenthood. It's called Making Proud Choices. And in that curricula, there is a game called the Condom Relay Races. They claim this is age appropriate because it's a game and kids like to play games. But the way this Condom Relay Races works, they literally tell the teachers, break the kids into 2 groups. You're going to play a relay race. You cannot separate the sexes because no one's allowed to assume your gender anymore. So the boys and girls have to be mixed together in this child abuse lesson. And the teacher's supposed to put them in 2 teams. And then the teacher is told to pull out 2 anatomically correct, fully erect adult male penis models, place them on the table, and the kids are now supposed to use condoms and have a condom relay race, putting the condoms on and taking them off. And everyone knows how a relay race works, which team can do it the fastest. This is child abuse. This is totally unnecessary. I heard about it from a mom whose daughter was in fifth grade, 11-year-old child. This curricula was in her classroom. And this mom, by the way, wasn't a strong conservative Republican. She was a Democrat. She was a liberal, and she was disgusted. And she couldn't believe that this kind of child abuse was being brought into her daughter's classroom and that she didn't receive any kind of opt-out notice or anything else. So it's I could go on for hours about the abuse that's being pushed in America's classrooms. It's not any kind of biology, sex education. It literally is the sexualization of our children. And like I said before, the schoolhouses are on fire. Let's not leave our kids in there while it burns to the ground. Let's pull them out. Let's protect them while we fight this nightmare. We've got to get it out. When my entire career, the things that are going on now, my entire career, these things were child abuse, and I would have been told to report them as child abuse. But now all of a sudden, they're not child abuse. What changed? Right?
Yeah. Well, it is sickening. It really is. But you know, a lot of people argue, and I've seen this argument. They're like, "Oh no, well, you know what? Are you afraid for them to learn what what sex is?" Or they'll minimalize it because they went to school and they had sex ed at some point in their schooling, and it was biology.
Right.
But they that's how they remember it, so they
Right.
assume it hasn't changed much. And condom relay races is I don't remember seeing those. Yeah, I didn't have those in my classroom. I
Yep.
think that would have probably got the teacher fired.
Absolutely.
So,
Every dad would have been out to the school saying, "What is going on here?" We
Yeah.
need our dads. We need
Yeah.
our dads to show up.
Parents, dads, because right now the people showing up are the mama bears, and God bless them. Nobody's going to protect their children like a mother. I mean, my wife is amazing, but the men have to get involved in this too.
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely.
So we're coming up to the end of the show. I'm actually a little over, but that's fine. We've been having great conversation. I wanted to talk about what made you embark onto this movie, because you've done books and you've done other things. I believe you might have done another movie. I could be wrong, but you embark. What specifically made you embark on this one?
Yeah, this is the first time I've produced a movie. I have been involved in another one, but well, the abuse is so bad. And we fought so hard to free teachers and government employees from forced unionism that I really wanted to get the word out to people. Look, stop paying these abusive people. Let's get them out of our agencies and our schools and our other institutions. Let's stop paying unions. Well, the unions made sure it was really hard for people to learn the truth about their rights. So I knew that we had to get the word out. So one of the things I did was write a book called Standing Up to Goliath, and that goes into a lot of detail about what's going on in our schools and how to get out of the unions. And my husband and I started For Kids and Country. It's just a nonprofit where we get the word out. But we knew that in order to reach a larger number of people, we really needed to have a movie. So we just started in faith with some of the parents that were fighting on the ground in California. We just started filming, and we didn't have money. And we'd raise a few bucks and we'd hire somebody that we could afford and start getting people on camera. And we just kept moving forward. And about a year and a half ago, we were able to secure some really good funding. And we were able to get together with some producers that had a lot of experience making movies. And we worked together and launched Whose Children Are They? A couple of months ago. We launched it on March 14th. And now it's available on Salem Now. People can just stream it. So the reason we were involved in making Whose Children Are They? Was we're just so desperate to get the word out to people about what's really going on in our schools. And we realized that via the COVID nonsense, more people awakened. But what they didn't fully awaken to is that the teacher unions are 100% behind all of it. And so many teachers are still funding these unions. And it's very hard to get to teachers. We can't email them at their work. We're not permitted to email them through their work email. So we need the help of Americans. Every American that hears my voice, we need your help. Everyone knows teachers. Grab a hold of them, adopt them, show them our movie, hand them my book, whatever you can do to awaken them. Because if teachers and other government employees will stop funding these unions, we can stop this nightmare. We can save our country. So we're in this fight to do our part to protect the children, to restore the teaching profession, to help save America, because our schools are key in saving this country. And so we hope that you'll join us.
And that is I actually popped up the website for the movie. As you can see, Salem Now, it's available April 15th, so it's available right now, and you can just press this and watch it. So I hope you will. I hope my audience will watch it. So in closing, I wanted to go ahead and ask you, kind of just to close it out, what you want to get across. But right before it, can you go ahead and talk about how people can get involved? I'm going to pop your website on for Kids and Country, and just kind of would like you to go ahead and talk about that.
Thank you so very much. The best way people can get involved, come to forkidsandcountry.org. There's just a slider that says join the movement. Click on it. It'll take you to a landing page. And on that page, there's buttons. Click the button, adopt a teacher. It takes 3 minutes to learn how to adopt a teacher. Put your arm around them, educate them. As soon as you've educated them, have them click on the second button, union exit. We walk them through. It doesn't matter what state they're in. There's an interactive map. They click on their state. They find their union. We work with another organization and help them to opt out, to get out of the union and stop paying these people to do these wicked things to our children in our country. And then you can just see the other buttons on that page. We have school options. We help you to escape public schools. There's a lot of different options out there, and we help you discover those. We even have people who will train you to do all sorts of, it's not just homeschooling, private schooling, public schooling. There's a lot of options for you. And we have evidence on what the unions are involved in. We have toolkits for you. You want to know more about critical race theory or the sex ed or how to stand up at a school board meeting? We have toolkits for you. So that's what we would ask you, is come to forkidsandcountry.org, click on join the movement, and just join us. Get in the fight with us. If you're already in the fight, help us to get more teachers involved. Teachers are terrified. They've been standing alone and they've been bullied. The unions use mafia tactics, and they've been bullying teachers for decades. So they're just scared. Stand with them, and you'll be surprised at how most teachers will stand with you and will find the courage to stop funding the unions if you stand with them. They've just been afraid, and a lot of them just don't know they've been freed. So that's what we'd ask you to do. And the movie, Whose Children Are They, is a tool. And my book, Standing Up to Goliath, they're just tools to help you educate the teachers and your community.
Well, I saw the preview, and we showed it coming on the trailer, and it's daunting. But as far as the For Kids and Country, if you want to get involved or if you want to get on it, she's made it pretty easy. She's done the work to make this something that parents can implement, teachers can implement. So I suggest you look on the site. I put it on for you, and that way you can know what it looks like. Ms. Friedrichs, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I appreciate the work that you do. Agree or disagree, folks, go ahead and look at the documentary. Check it out. Make an informed opinion always about everything. You should make an informed decision. So make an informed decision. Ms. Friedrichs, it is time to go, but thank you so much for coming on. And, I wish you most success on the documentary.
Thank you much. It has been my honor to be here. And thank you to your audience for being in the battle.
I appreciate it. All right, y'all. I'm gonna be having the sheriff of Ellis County on and talk about crime in the local area at some point. I'll be putting that show on, but I appreciate you guys watching and giving me your time. You take care.